In our time, we will defend the land we love, and we will act on the ideals that gave it birth. In America, we've not always lived up to our ideals, yet we always reach for them. We believe that everyone deserves a chance, that everyone has value, that no insignificant person was ever born. We believe that all are diminished when any are hopeless. We are one people, committed to building a single nation of justice and opportunity. America rejects bigotry. Every faith is practiced and protected here because we are one country. Every immigrant can be fully and equally American because we're one country. Race and color should not divide us because America is one country. These American ideals of opportunity and equality come to us across the generations, and they have attracted millions from across the world. Yet there are young Americans growing up here under this flag who doubt the promise and justice of our country. They hear talk of opportunity and see little evidence of opportunity around them. Every American must believe in the promise of America. And to reach this noble, necessary goal, there is a role for government. We're a generous and caring people. The policies of our government must heed the universal call of all faiths to love a neighbor as we would want to be loved ourselves. We need a government that is focused, effective, and close to the people. A government that does a few things and does them well. Government cannot solve every problem, but it can encourage people and communities to help themselves and to help one another. Often the truest kind of compassion is to help citizens build lives of their own. I call my philosophy and approach compassionate conservatism. It is compassionate to actively help our fellow citizens in need. It is conservative to insist on responsibility and on results. And with this hopeful approach, we can make a real difference in people's lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of the George W. Bush Presidential Center, Ken Hersh.
Good morning and welcome to the 2019 Forum on Leadership. And with thanks to our presenting sponsor, Pioneer Natural Resources, thank you for your support. You know, today we're in a period of solid economic growth, near record low unemployment, yet there's a lot of anxiety around. And I asked myself the question, if times are so good, why do we feel so anxious? And at its core, I believe the reason comes back to three major forces that are at play today. The fiscal realities from the 2009 financial crisis are now in full view. A demographic shift is upon us, combined with the accelerating pace of technological change. These forces are causing an intergenerational conflict that we're now experiencing. First, over money. 83 million millennials who have come of age since the financial crisis and will comprise 75% of the workforce in this country by the year 2030, are now aware that the baby boom generation left them a $22 billion federal and growing tax bomb, or debt bomb. In addition, student debt is crushing the generation, as well as underfunded pensions and a Social Security system that is clearly not sustainable. Second, there's a conflict over the system and how the system works and serves. The baby boom generation, generally, the system worked. Despite a couple financial crises, the post-World War II institutions, the two-party system, the post-Cold War, prosperity was felt. And for the most part, that group believes in market-based institutions and things generally held. Versus this up-and-coming generation has anxiety about the future. A majority have come of age since the global financial crisis and haven't experienced yet that prosperity. 49% of millennials surveyed say the global financial crisis changed the way they think about saving, investing, and spending. At the same time, this group is more connected, more fragmented, more diverse, and more technologically savvy and less defined by political labels than any generation in modern history. 48% of millennials classify themselves as political independents. 64% believe that the government should do more to solve today's problems. And yet, they increasingly feel the system is rigged and slanted toward the rich and connected. In addition, there's increasing demand that social outcomes, not just market outcomes, are worth balancing. In addition to this intergenerational conflict, we're seeing a clash between two worlds that we both live in, the fast world and the slow world. The fast world is defined by speed. Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, said it best in 2018. He said, "Things have never moved this fast, and going forward, things will never again move this slow." The fast world is all around us: artificial intelligence, robotics, gene editing, regenerative medicine, cryptocurrencies, and coming quantum computing speeds that are 100 million times faster than today's semiconductors. The slow world values truth and accuracy over speed. Examples of that slow world in which we live are federal government, three branches of government, checks and balances, our multilateral institutions like the UN and the EU, multi-party agreements like NAFTA, jury trials are slow and deliberate truth-finding mechanisms. The scientific process with peer review, double-blind studies, all are trying to get to accuracy at the expense of speed. These worlds are different in that they have differing views of disruption. In the fast world, disruption has positive connotations: creative destruction, efficiency, wealth creation. In the slow world, disruption has negative connotations relating to the perceived and maybe apparent loss of control. Usually, these worlds are far apart, but today they're clashing, and they're clashing without rules of engagement. In our news and politics, the fast world's goal of getting your message out and having it go viral, regardless of whether or not it's true, is apparent to all of us. In our financial systems, where blockchain and cryptocurrencies could disrupt established monetary control mechanisms. In our geopolitics, for example, where foreign state actors are able to use the slow world's forces of transparency and freedom of expression against itself. And in our national security, where the instruments of war are changing to those of automated drones and cyber warfare. Combatants need not be on the battlefield anymore. Yet there are no rules of engagement for this war. We are used to Geneva Conventions on the treatment of prisoners. We're used to treaties, for example, on the use of chemical weapons. But there's no Geneva Convention for artificial intelligence. How these worlds battle will define the planet over the coming decades. China and Russia view the old world as superior and the slow world as superior. There is no doubt who has control over the data and the networks. And the US, we're struggling for an answer. We love the internet. We love the convenience. We love all of the things that it has enabled until we actually experience how it can threaten us or invade our privacy or undermine established institutions. And the result is anxiety, regardless of the economy. And it's due to the realization that things that used to be axiomatic or givens that we were all raised with are somehow being called into question. What can we believe? First, our eyes. Did we really read that? Real versus unprofessional journalism or news generated by bot farms in far-off lands cause us to question what we read in the media. The majority of Americans today, the majority, don't view media as credible, any media. Second, are we really having to justify capitalism as the best way to allocate resources and lift all boats? For a post-World War II, post-Cold War generation that saw 2 billion people being lifted out of poverty, this seems nonsensical. Yet today, the framework itself is being challenged, even while places like Venezuela are imploding. Today, 51% of 18 to 29-year-olds have a favorable view towards socialism. Third, do we really worry? Do we have to worry about the fact that we're going to live in a democracy in the future? The Bush Institute's National 2018 Study on Democracy, done in conjunction with the Penn Biden Center and Freedom House, produced some worrisome results, finding that a majority in this country feel that our democracy is weak and getting weaker. 50% feel that, quote, there is a real danger of the U.S. becoming a non-democratic, authoritarian country. And then finally, are our institutional frameworks the right frameworks at all? The UN hasn't created peace among member nations. The WTO hasn't stopped trade wars. The EU hasn't prevented uneven economic growth. NATO doesn't stop Russian saber rattling, or Turkey, a member country, from working against our interests. And Congress, with its polarizing dysfunction, has a problem in tackling national priorities. Today, 13% of Americans approve of the work being done in Congress. But at a time when those institutions are their weakest, we may need them the most, ironically, as the declines in trust elsewhere are notable. So how do we get out of this situation? Principled leadership. That will lead us. Having a true north set of values is the common denominator in leading amidst unscripted moments. President Bush on 9/11 is the prime example. The last thing he could have imagined when he woke up that morning on September 11th was when he went to bed that night, the U.S. would have entered a war that continues to this day. But he led through it, defined by his character, with a consistent message that we will not tire, we will not falter, and we will not fail. Just as the U.S. Treasury bill is the risk-free rate against which all corporate bonds are priced, in many respects, the office of the President of the United States is the political risk-free rate against which all global actors gauge. If the risk of that office increases, global risks are amplified. Thank you, President Bush, for your constant reminder that the office of the presidency is more important than the occupant. Today, we must recognize that a leader's responsibility is to serve those being led, all of them. And our founding fathers highlighted that power is derived from the consent of the governed, and micromanaging a large population just isn't possible. In the future, new paradigms of leadership will be required. Leaders have moved from the task of managing through uncertainty to one of managing through the unknowable. Past patterns may no longer be predictive in a world where quantum computing power of 100 million times faster is able to answer a question before it is even asked. This world favors a compassionate, conservative philosophy, one that is fiscally conservative and socially tolerant. Why? Because it has to. The government's resources and capacity are limited. Markets, while not perfect, have been the greatest anti-poverty program ever. Focusing on expanding opportunity leads to more compassionate outcomes. And socially tolerant because it is right. We now serve a population less defined by labels, which is more fragmented, more connected, more skeptical of institutional arrangements than any in modern history, and it can vote with its feet very, very quickly. And this group will only tolerate the moral compass pointing towards the protection of human freedoms. That's the essence of compassionate conservatism. And that was in the message you saw in President Bush's words from 2002. He saw it early. Corporate compassion leadership doesn't start with government. It actually ends there. It starts at home, at our kitchen tables, on our sidewalks, and in our communities. In the end, our government reflects our values, so that hard work will not be wasted. As Jackie Robinson explained, life is not a spectator sport. If you're going to spend your whole life in the grandstand just watching what goes on, you're wasting your life. At the Bush Center, we are already there. Our portfolio is inspired by the values which guided President and Mrs. Bush in their public service: economic and political freedom, less government dependency, and a strong and compassionate country. Our mission is to apply those values as we engage communities in the U.S. and around the world by developing leaders advancing policy, and taking action to address today's most pressing challenges. We see it as one of our integral parts of our mission to develop, recognize, and celebrate leadership. Our 4 leadership programs that we run here at the Bush Center are phenomenal. This week, we released our Leadership in Action report, measuring the results of our programs, available on our website at bushcenter.org. And I am so proud of our programs that they have achieved a Net Promoter Score of 92, which is almost unheard of for programs of this type. And 99% of our graduates reported that they are likely to realize their long-term visions thanks to our programming. This second annual Forum on Leadership continues that effort as well. We will highlight private and public sector leadership and explore disruptive technologies. We will learn from one of the most distinguished and experienced players in geopolitics that this country has ever seen. And we'll hear from graduates of 2 of our 4 leadership programs. And tonight, we will see local and global leadership in action. It's an exciting day made possible by the support of everyone here and the trust that President and Mrs. Bush has placed in our wonderful team to undertake programming that will both challenge and inspire. Thank you all for that, and thank you to our phenomenal board and our partners here at SMU. It is now my honor to kick things off with our first discussion on how compassionate conservatism plays out globally. Please join me in welcoming the Vice Chairman at Bank of America and member of the bank's executive management team, who is responsible for the bank's strategic positioning and is a tireless advocate for corporate responsibility. The bank recently made an investment in our work of $1 million here at the Bush Center as part of our Charge to Keep Capital campaign to support our leadership programming, and for that we are grateful. She will offer her perspective and introduce our opening conversation. Please join me in welcoming the Vice Chairman of Bank of America, Ms. Anne Finucane.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Ken. I'm delighted to be here at the Bush Institute in celebration and in support of President and Mrs. Bush's mission and leadership in developing and recognizing leaders who are making a difference on the global stage. President Bush's focus on the military and our veterans, and Laura Bush's work with women in emerging democracies serve as an inspiration for all of us. Bank of America has supported the Bush Institute since 2011 because we share the vision of ensuring lasting positive change and empowerment, the power to make a difference. I'm joined here today by Jennifer Chandler, who is our market president in Dallas, so shout out to her if she's here somewhere. And we're particularly happy to partner on the Presidential Scholars Leadership Program, and proud to have one of the scholars, Maryse Dawes, with us here today. You'll have an opportunity to hear her inspiring story later in the program. Today's program is focused on the themes of compassionate leadership and what it means to be a responsible global citizen in today's world. These are themes that also guide us at Bank of America. It's a turbulent time, and our CEO, Brian Moynihan, and all of us understand it's our role and our responsibility to help address the biggest challenges facing society today, whether it's access to capital to women, a supportive and welcoming environment for returning veterans, access to clean water and sanitation, affordable housing, and creating greater economic opportunity for all of us. So today, it's my pleasure to introduce our first conversation that will explore this theme of what it means to be a responsible global citizen. And who better to participate in this conversation with President Bush than Dr. Robert Gates, who has served every US president with the exception of one, from LBJ through Barack Obama, who has also found time to be the president of Texas A&M and a best-selling author. He's the only Secretary of Defense in US history to be asked to remain in that office by a newly elected president. Dr. Gates personifies what it means to be a global citizen and a global problem solver. Moderating the conversation will be Paula Dobriansky, former Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs and former President Special Envoy to Northern Ireland. We could use her today. Over her career, Paula has tirelessly work to advance international cooperation on the environment, energy, health, development, and humanitarian issues, a big mandate. Today, she is a much sought-after lecturer at both Harvard and Georgetown. So please join me in welcoming to the stage the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush, Dr. Gates, and Paula Dobriansky. Thank you.
Thank you.